Hi guys, it's Carol K. Perry. It is February 10th, 2022. I'm at home and I thought we would have a conversation about sourdough starter. And I thought I might give you a little bit of insight as to how I've approached this, good, bad, or indifferent. It's where I am. And it's taken a little bit longer than I originally anticipated, but I did deviate from the plan. And that's part of science, part of experimentation. And I think when you have a mind like that, that's what you do. I want to know what happens. I want to know what the controls are. I want to know, is it going to taste a little bit better if I starve it for a little bit? Is it going to, put off a little bit more of those acids that give it more of a sour taste? So here's where I am. I started out with Ben Starr's video, and he's on YouTube, and thank God for YouTube, right? Because that wasn't around whenever my kids were young. And you can glean so much information from that, those videos now. So what I generally do is I go through the videos and take what I think applies to me and kind of mix them together from video to video and figure out what fits my needs best. So I started out with Ben Starr's pineapple juice, organic flour and water starter. He suggests rye. I couldn't get rye in my store, so I just used unbleached organic. And that worked for about 5 days, and then I switched to regular flour, bread flour. And I think I started out with King Arthur, and then I moved to what I bought at the local GFS in the 40-pound or 50-pound bag, whatever it is. So what I did up to day 5 was follow his directions pretty strictly. And then it says discard half the starter and give it a feed. Well, I didn't discard it because I knew that my end game was going to be having a large amount of starter so that I can put it into the refrigerator, let it go dormant, and then pull it out and feed it as necessary, rather than baby on the counter this huge amount. Because you don't know, you might want to bake pretzels and bread in the same day. And if you do, I don't want to be waiting for the starter to kind of rejuvenate and wait a full day. So what I did, I started in a small mason jar, which I have right up here right now. That's not the one that I started in. I'll get to that. And put that content into plastic, used a plastic container, and kind of babied it for 20 days or so. And then I moved to this ginormous jar, and I dumped the full contents, and not discarding any of my waste. Put the full contents in there and gave it a nice flour water feeding and watched it take off. So some of the things that I had to overcome were, I have stone countertops, and I was putting over here under my lights, I was putting my jar there on the stone, and I think the stone was conducting, it was pulling the heat from my jar. So then I put a towel underneath, and that sort of helped to insulate it. And then I realized that if I put it on my paper plate here, my paper plate holder, right directly under the light, that the glass jar would heat up just a little bit, and it was enough to incubate what was in it. And as of yesterday, it doubled happily within about 6 hours. So I think it's a nice, strong starter. I've put it through its paces. I've starved it a few days. I've fed it more than I needed to a few days. I've changed the proportions. I've dumped some off. I've added some to it. It's been through the paces. But what I have now is something that whenever I smell it, smells like a really nice sourdough, and I'm pleased with it. So I think it's a good starting point. But the question is, what do I do with it now? I have this ginormous jug of starter. What am I gonna do with this starter, right? What would you do with all of this? Well, if you have people that you want to give it to, that would be a nice thing to do with it instead of discarding. But in lieu of that, if you don't have people around you that are looking for sourdough starter, asking you for sourdough starter, here's my thought based on everything that I've watched. rather than feeding my jar today, and you can see it's risen all the way to the top, and I have taken some out. I have some sourdough starter in a loaf of bread that's kind of, you know, hanging out and proofing in the fridge. And that was taken out, but I also took out enough to make pretzels. So I took out some starter, I gave that a feeding, and it's over here, and I'll show you how it looks. Well, first off, this is my starter kind of in dormancy. So it's hungry, you know, it's still bubbly, but it could use a good feeding right now because I haven't fed it yet today. But this, I pulled out of it and I did feed it. And, oh, let's see here. Get it off of here without busting it. This I did feed. And you can see after about, oh, I don't know, 3 hours, maybe 4, it's looking pretty good. You know, not overly bubbly, but I'd say it's already doubled. So that's gonna be ready to go for me for pretzels. And I'm thinking from this point forward, what I'm going to do is, I know that's a little tenuous, isn't it? Stack it up there and hope it doesn't fall down. What I'm gonna do is dump all of my starter from my big jug. I'm not gonna keep this on my counter anymore. It's too much to feed, it's too much to take care of. I'm gonna put this into here, and then I'm gonna put it in the fridge. And then every time that I want something, you know, I wanna make something with sourdough, I'm gonna pull that out, let it sit on the counter for a little bit, just the amount that I need, in a mason jar, let it wake up a little bit, and then I'll feed it with flour and water and say, okay, now you're good enough. Now you're ready to go. And you can see what it's doing over there under the light. You know, it's rip-raring ready to go, whereas this is more in a dormant state and not as bubbly and not as happy because it's not being fed. So Ben Starr's logic, and he's a YouTube, I don't know what you would consider him, he's a master chef, but his logic is that you can let your starter go for months, and that's cool. It's no problem. It just gets more and more sour, and I'm good with that. You know, what's the point of sourdough if it's not going to be sour? And I'm also thinking, whenever you feed your starter, you want to feed it at least as much as the amount that you're putting in. So if you have 1 ounce and it's really nasty, I mean like really dark, because it's been sitting and fermenting, and it has a really high alcohol content by then, and it's too much and you think it's too bitter, my thought would be then you just add double the amount of flour, double the amount of water whenever you feed it, so it kind of thins that out and makes it a little less pungent. And then whenever you put it in there, you don't have to use all of it, but it sure beats the heck out of feeding this ginormous thing and keeping that on my counter and throwing waste away. So I'm going to follow his logic and see whether or not that works. I hope it does. I started a loaf. Today is my first loaf of actual sourdough bread. I made a yeast bread, artisan bread, a couple of days ago that was phenomenal, and I'll probably do a video on that. I was really impressed with it because my husband, he won't eat the bread that I make in the Oster. He won't eat it. So it's kind of senseless. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to buy bread anymore. Can't we just have homemade bread? I don't mind making it, but he won't even take it to work with him. So I had to come up with, you know, plan B. And my plan B is that artisan bread that is no knead, that goes into the Dutch oven and comes out beautiful and crusty. It makes a wonderful sandwich, and it's nice and moist inside. It doesn't taste like you're missing anything. It tastes like you're getting a gourmet sandwich, like, you know, from Panera or something. So he's game for that. So I think we're getting to a happy place with our bread around here. Now, if I can just tweak my sourdough and decide what I can make with it, you know, next step is going to be obviously bread. I have that ready in the fridge. but I think I'm gonna do some pretzels and just kind of explore, see what else I can make with it. And you know, this could be super exciting because, you know, anything you do in bulk, I'm thinking I can do the pretzels in bulk and freeze them if I want. And my son, whenever I mentioned it this morning, you know, he said, oh, can you put cinnamon and sugar on it? So yeah, I think it's gonna be good. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good day. And I don't know if this helps you or not, but Ben Starr's video is extremely helpful. I've looked at a few of the other ones, but I like his no nonsense approach. You know, let's not get crazy about this, because when you think about it, people have done this for centuries. Are we overthinking it? I'm thinking we probably are. I mean, they didn't have all the controls that we have now. They didn't have, oh, what is the temperature of the water that you're putting in? Oh, are we gonna put it on a scale? They didn't have all of those controls, and obviously they got the job done. So I think we're making it a little harder than it needs to be, and I'm on board with let's make it simple so that I actually make it every day. Have a great day.